Hi, in today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to use Fusion in almost everything about Fusion. Meaning that in about 30 minutes, you'll be able to use the main functions of Fusion and you'll be able to draw objects of medium complexity. By medium complexity, I mean the objects you see here. Or some examples like this radiator grill, which blows hot air from the radiators into the rooms. During the tutorial you're about to follow, you'll be able to pause and rewind to review any point you didn't understand. The project you see here is a support to place the spool above my 3D printer, because originally it was on the left and it took up too much space. Here, this is a trap that sprays a jet of water when it detects movement. By the end of the course you'll also be able to draw this stand for a mini drill, or this radio with speaker and mini amplifier that I recovered. Here is a 3D filament rewinder that I had to design for a filament I bought, which was badly wound. Next is a flower pot with aquatic decoration. Here is a shock protection case for my multimeter. And finally, I'll stop here with a big, powerful flashlight. Let's start. When you begin a drawing, you must first create a sketch. So you click on Sketch and choose the plane on which you want to work. In our case, I'll take the flat XY plane. It switches to top view and we'll start with a rectangle. We begin the rectangle here, for example, up to here, that's fine. Then we'll take a circle, I'll place it also a bit randomly here. Now let's look at the straight line. Cool. I'll draw several lines like this, and I'll close everything by joining the line here. The surface will turn blue, which means it's a closed surface. We'll also use this tool here and we'll see the others later. You can see here that it creates curved lines which depend on the next point. There, I close everything and the surface turns blue. I'll create a circle here for the purpose of the exercise and for the explanation that will follow. I'll make it this size. Now I'll show you some constraints. I'll ask that the circles be concentric with each other. Now they share the same center. Up here you have the tangent tool, which I'll use to make the circle tangent to this line here. This one is the dimension tool, which lets you set dimensions. I'll set the circle to 47 millimeters. I won't dimension the rest, you've understood the principle. Let's rather look at the scissors tool here. With this tool you can cut lines or curves, and the surfaces will redraw themselves. You can also click on key points as you see here, to modify lines or curves. Let's move this one for example. I'll stop here with the 2D drawing and we'll turn it into volume. That's called extruding. So I'll click on Finish Sketch here, and it will switch me to perspective view. Then I click on Extrude, I'll select this surface to give it volume. Now since it starts to stick out a bit on top, I'll lower it. For that I need to hold down the middle mouse wheel and drag it down. If now I want to rotate the volume, I hold Shift and the mouse wheel and move the mouse. Or click on the small icon that lights up in blue here at the bottom. Another option is to click on the cube at the top right, to highlight the face you want to work on. I'll move it a bit more, I'll leave it in this position and validate. You can always modify the faces, reduce or increase them, or give them a value here. I'll set it to +25 compared to its last position. I'll do a few more rotations, because I'm looking for a face on which I could draw new shapes. I'll take this face here, reposition it so I can work on it. I see here that part of the piece is hiding the surface I need to work on. To fix that, just check section here, and it hides all the parts in front of the surface. Now I'll draw a rectangle. Position it, it doesn't really matter. Then I'll dimension it, so I'll set dimensions. I want this line to be 10 millimeters from this line. And I also want this one to be 10 millimeters from this line as well. I could dimension the rectangle too, but you've understood the principle, I think. Now I'll add a circle. Place it here. And I'll give it a dimension of 9 millimeters, and I'll validate here. Let's do a small rotation, so we see the shape better. Now I'll click on the Extrude tool here, and I'll ask to extrude the two surfaces we just created. When I pull, I add material, and when I push, I cut into the material. Here I rotate, still with Shift and the mouse wheel. Now when I pull on it, at first I create material, and when I reach the other side, I cut into the material, but when I click on Operations and choose the Join option, I get two bars crossing through. Let's go back to Cut. I'll undo that. Now let's see that it's also possible to extrude in both directions. Just click here on two sides. On the right side, I'll go in by 2 millimeters, and on the left side I can go through completely or partially. A small rotation to see better. And here we see the distances traveled in both directions. Now I'll go all the way through and validate. Now let's look at a new tool, the Revolve tool, which we see here. So we'll draw on this face. We click on it and reposition it a little. On this surface we'll draw an ellipse. We start it here, up to there, and make it a surface. Let's move it up a bit and create a second one here, from there to there. A small rotation, and click here to finish the sketch. Now I'll select the Revolve tool. I click on the first ellipse, and then click here on the axis. This generates a kind of hollow shape cutting into the part, but I'll change it by clicking on Join. Good, and I validate. Now I'll do the same with the other ellipse. So I click again on Revolve, but I see the sketch has disappeared. I click here to make the last one we created reappear. I select the contour, and then I'll select the axis, a bit wider this time. I'll let it cut and validate. Let's rotate a bit to see that it goes through. Now this piece, I can hide it. I'll click on this face and make the body reappear. I move it a bit down and let's see another example of Revolve. Here with this tool I'll create a shape. I start here, let's go. I'll finish it with a straight line. It turns blue, meaning the shape is closed. I'll still modify it slightly. I'll also take this opportunity to say that if you have a comment, or if you enjoy the video, you can leave it below in the comments. Another small rotation and I put it back to the front view. Okay, I validate. Now I'll reposition it so it's fully visible and I'll click again on Revolve. I select the profile. This will be the profile. And now the axis of revolution. It's lower, but it's hidden by body number 1. So we'll hide body number 1. We'll select the blue axis here and now we've created a vase, and I validate. There we go. I'll make body number 1 reappear and rotate a bit to see better. Now let's hide the vase. Don't forget we can always modify the faces. Here for example. And here too. Instead of cut, I'll choose the join option. Okay. We'll finish that and now look at a new tool. It's here, the thread tool. So I'll first draw several shapes, and then you'll understand. I'll draw on this face, let's zoom in a bit. A circle. I'll place it here and give it a dimension of 6 millimeters. I validate and I'll extrude it now. I'll set it to 30. No, minus 30, we'll put a minus in front. Now let's see a new concept, the concept of construction, and in our case, an offset plane. So I'll create an offset plane relative to this face, and I'll set it to 10 millimeters. I'll draw on the new plane by selecting it. And I'll draw a circle also of 6 millimeters. It's not aligned, but we'll fix that. So I'll constrain it to be concentric with the first circle, and validate. I rotate slightly and we see we have a new circle at 10 millimeters. I'm going to give it volume with the extrusion tool and we'll set it like the other one, so at 30 millimeters. By the way, don't forget to save your work from time to time by clicking on the floppy disk above the design button. I'm going to draw a new sketch on this face again, and it will be another circle, but this time 15 millimeters. We saw the little blue circle appear, which means we were right at the center. A small rotation and we finish the sketch. we're going to extrude the circles. Careful, you have to extrude both, otherwise it will create a kind of washer. I'm going to leave it at 4 millimeters. So now I'm going to draw a small circle on this new face. I'm going to set it to 3 millimeters. A small rotation and I finish the sketch again. I'm going to extrude this, but I'm going to carve into the material. We're going to take a new concept, the concept of patterns, and in our case, circular patterns. In the dialog box that appears, I don't select core, but functions. I select the half circle, then the axis of rotation. Here it is. And I see that it created 2 more circles along the axis, but I want there to be 7 in total. And OK. I'm going to do a slight rotation again and then we'll look at the threading tool. I click on it and then I click here and it will create a thread. I'm going to ask it to model it so we can see what it looks like. Here I can set the full length, or not. And here I ask it to memorize. In our case, I want the full length and a metric of 6, and I validate. Now I'm going to choose the threading tool to make the screw. Since I memorized, it kept the 6 millimeters here. It's still in full length, but if I uncheck here I can change the thread length. We keep the full length, and we accept. We'll take the opportunity to look at the Fillet tool, because here it seems a bit too sharp. So I clicked on Fillet and I'm going to do a small rotation to see better. There we clearly see the arrow. I'm going to enlarge a bit and modify. Ah yes, that's much better. I'm going to leave it at 1.5, another small rotation and then OK. Now we're going to look at 2 interesting tools. The first is the section analysis. It's located here. I click on it and I designate the face. So we see that it cuts into the part and we see what's inside. By clicking on the arrow here, I can move the section and we see it layer by layer. I stop here and we're going to look at the thread. So I move a bit closer and we're going to straighten it here at the top. Once again we validate. I'm going to look for the move tool here. I'm going to move the screw inside the thread. Once again, we're going to enlarge a little bit more. One thing to know, if you want to make this part in 3D, you can make it as is if you do it in resin. On the other hand, if you want to make it in filament, you'll need to reduce the size of the screw and increase the size of the hole. We're going to do that with the tool here, Face Offset. So for that, we choose the tool, it's already done, and we're going to zoom in a bit more and select the 4 faces that form the thread. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I'm going to ask to offset the face by -0.15. I don't know if you saw, but the hole got bigger. If not, rewind a few seconds and I validate. So we did it for the female part, now we're going to do it for the male part. So we rotate the part, reposition it to work properly, and I select face offset again. 1 face, 2, 3 and 4. So I'm going to reduce it also by 1.15. No, that's too much, 1.10 instead. That's better. And we accept. Now I move the part a bit away, rotate it, fix the view with the cube. If I'm doing this manipulation here for a filament printer, it's because it has a lot more imperfections and the screw might not fit. We can immediately see there's a larger gap here, and I validate. We're going to move all this a little bit, and I'm going to say a few words about section analysis. So section analysis is located here, we can hide it. We make it reappear. If I right-click, I can modify it. So I pull it. I push it. I pull it back. I'll stop here and validate. What I can also do by right-clicking on it is simply delete it. Now let's look at the chamfer and fillet tools, although we've already seen the fillet tool briefly before. I click on fillet and select this edge. I'll tilt the part forward to see it better and I'll create a fillet. We'll change it here and set it to 5. I click OK and take the fillet tool again. I'll select this edge and pull it. That gives us a nice rounded shape. And I'll set it to 8 mm. Let's look at the chamfer tool. Now I take this edge. I enlarge a bit and push it, and there we go. Yeah, we'll leave it at 2 mm. Alright, on to new discoveries. So here you have the bolt. If you click on it here, you see it, then you don't, and then you see it again. If you double click on it or press F2, you can rename it. Let's call it screw. Then, something interesting, I right-click on its new name and choose copy. I right-click again on its new name and choose paste. Arrows appear and I pull in the direction I want, and oh, miracle, it created a second one. And again, OK. So now you've learned how to copy parts. Earlier we saw how to create an offset plane, now we'll see how to create a tangent plane. So you click on Construction and select Tangent Plane. You can only create tangent planes on circular faces. That's why only circular faces are selectable. We'll place it here. We position it to see it better and we see that we can rotate the tangent plane. I search a bit and then stop here. OK. Now I'll draw a sketch on the new plane. It automatically repositions on the face. We'll start with a rectangle. I'll set it to 20, press tab, and enter 40. We're still in millimeters of course, and I validate. A little rotation and we'll extrude all that. I'll move it a bit and enlarge it. I click on the arrow and move it inward. But I don't want to cut, I want to join. I'll select to object to prevent it from sticking out into the hole behind. So I'll continue it to the end and finish it. I move it a bit to see better and now I'll draw a sketch in the rectangle that was created. I'll move it a bit more for ease and redraw another rectangle. Although I could draw a circle, we'll stick with the rectangle. Rather than drawing on the rectangle, I should have edited the previous sketch. But that's something we'll see later. Back to the drawing, I'll extrude it this time inward. We've just seen the tangent plane, now we'll look at the angled plane. I move the part again to find some angles. I go to Construct and choose Angled Plane. We see several angles here, but I'll take this one. I select it, enlarge, and click on the sketch to start drawing. Again, I select the circle. I look for a working position. I'll start the circle here and give it a dimension of 7. Note, I always use round dimensions, but I could have set it to 7.32 for example. I reposition the part a bit more and here again, we'll extrude it inward. Already seen, right? Now I'll go back to what I said a moment ago, it's always better to edit sketches you've already created rather than creating new ones. If I take this sketch here and right-click on it, I select Edit Sketch. It returns to its original state with the 2 ellipse. And this time I'll draw a center-to-center slot. I start it here, up to there. I give it a bit more surface. Right, let's go check the Offset tool. I select the line to offset. Instead of outward, I'll offset it inward. Offset by at least 2 mm. And I validate. Since it was one of the first sketches I made at the beginning, I need to find the sketch again. Was it sketch number 4? No. Number 3? Ah yes, that's the one. Right, we'll fast forward the next sequence. The outer part, we pull it. We accept it. And the inner part, we'll push it. There we go. I rotate the part to show you a bit. And I accept. The next exercise will be a bit longer, but it's very interesting. We'll start by creating an offset plane on this face. We'll place it at 10 mm. Accept it. And then extrude this part by 15 mm. I'll now go get the split body tool here. The body to split, it's body 1. Now I select the split tool, and the splitting tool is the plane here. When I accept the split, it creates a new body, body number 5. Now we'll move the new body by 10 millimeters. That's fine, and I accept. We'll hide the last offset plane we created and make a new sketch on this new face. I recenter it a bit and enlarge it. I'll draw a circle roughly in the center here. Fairly large circle, actually. I'll go create a polygon. Circumscribed polygon here. There's the little blue circle that marks the center of the circle. I'll place it there, and I'll give it a dimension of 3 millimeters. I'll create 2 lines, but only construction lines to help with the drawing. They'll be shown here as dashed lines. I go from the center to the center of the line. You can tell it's the center because there's a little blue triangle. To represent both directions, I'll do the same on the other line. Now we have both directions represented. I'll zoom out a bit. Earlier we saw circular patterns. In this exercise, we'll look at rectangular patterns. As the object, I select the 6 faces of the hexagon. That's done. Now I'll select the directions. So I'll select the dashed lines as the 2 directions. You can see the arrows aligned with the dashed lines. I zoom out a bit and pull the first arrow. I'll pull the second arrow too. In the direction option, I'll select symmetrical. For the second arrow as well. I'll change the quantity to 9. And for the other one too. That creates a sort of honeycomb. I'll arrange them a bit better. I'll set the distance here to 34 millimeters. And the other direction the same. Now I'll take the masking option to hide the hexagons outside the circle and speed up the video a bit. Once that's done, I'll select the scissors tool and start deleting all the lines outside the circle. If a few tiny ones remain, it's not a big deal. Well, it depends on what you'll use it for. If it's to create 3D objects, then it's not a big deal. But if it's for aesthetic drawing, well, up to you. That's what it looks like so far. Let's continue. I recenter the image and I'll recreate a slightly larger circle. However, it shouldn't be a construction circle, it should be a solid one. So I untick here. I'll set it to 74 millimeters. And I finish the sketch. I'll tilt it slightly to the left to see better. And here we go. I'll tick all the boxes to extrude. In fast forward. While it's doing that, don't forget to save the video to favorites. I'll also include the outline. That's what it looks like. Now I'll extrude in a way that removes material. That's what it looks like. That's also how I created the 4 objects you see here on the left. Now we'll take the last sketch to do something slightly different. We'll hide all the bodies except the grid we made last. We reposition and switch to top view. We'll draw a circle roughly this size. Then 3 lines arranged like this. I'll set the 2 lines to be tangent to the circle. This one with this circle, and that one with the circle here. Since it's tangent, I can delete the half circle here. And we'll use the Fillet tool. So I'll round off this corner. Now I take the arrow and set it to 15 millimeters. It usually keeps the last value, so I'll leave it at 15 millimeters. I'll finish the sketch and now turn it into volume. I extrude it to 80 millimeters. That created a large volume. Let's take the opportunity to look at the shell tool here, which lets you create boxes. So I click on the face I want to open and set the thickness to 2 millimeters. Since it's a box, you can see it has a bottom. I make the last sketch I want to work on reappear. This one? No, it's the second to last then. I don't need body 5, it's the sketch I need. So I'll reuse it to work on a new body. Just like earlier, I'll speed up the selection using the old sketch and the new body. I'll extrude and validate. That's what it looks like. I can still rotate the part and reuse the sketch. I'll explain why later. Here, I'll select a few and extrude again. Now I can explain, it's the method I used to create those brush holders you see down at the bottom right. Now let's look at the loft tool. It's a tool that lets you gradually transition from one shape to another. For that, we'll create an offset plane from this face at 100 millimeters. We create a sketch on the new plane and draw an ellipse. First the center, then the edge, and we give it some surface. I go get the loft tool, select the first surface, then the second. That gives us this result. In the menu at the top right, there are lots of interesting options I'll let you explore. Now I'll show you another method to make a copy, the mirror method. For that, I need a body and a mirror plane. I select the mirror symmetry tool, then the body to copy. Next, I select the symmetry plane, this face. It will create a mirror of the screw. But be careful, it's a trap. A screw goes into the hole clockwise, while the mirrored screw will go in counterclockwise. So I delete it and we'll see a better example later. But before that, I noticed something that's not very aesthetic here. As I said earlier, you can always go back and modify something you did earlier. I click on the second extrusion I made on the honeycomb plane and click Modify. It will reposition the box as it was at the time of extrusion. I just need to grab the arrow and move it where I want. I validate and it returns to its last position. I do a small rotation, yeah, that's a bit better. I'll hide body 1 and show body 2. Now let's look at a clearer example of mirror symmetry. I make a sketch on this plane. Draw a simple 6 mm circle. I rotate the part a bit and finish here. Now I create another sketch on the opposite rising plane. I take the spline tool again with smoothing points. I start the curve at the center of the circle I just created and finish it here. I tweak it a bit and finish. Let's take the opportunity to look at a new tool, the sweep tool. I first select the profile, then the path. It creates a 6 mm circle along the entire path. I change the option from cut to join. Now the mirror symmetry tool comes into play. It opens a new dialog box. Instead of object, I choose feature. I select the object, then the symmetry plane. Here. This is partly the method I use to design the objects around here. I'll take the opportunity to rename body 2 to vase. This object, like all the others, you can change its opacity either for aesthetics or to make it easier to work with. Here, I'll set it to 70%. You can see the vase has become more transparent. A right-click and I can make it even more transparent. Now it's at 10% transparency. I click the undo arrow to cancel. Now we move on to the next tool, the Embossed text tool. When I told you at the beginning that you'd learn all of Fusion 360, it's actually almost all the main functions. But it's not everything, because there are still hundreds of options for each tool. Still, you've got a solid foundation to move forward. I've positioned the part as I wanted. Now I'll write the text here and emboss it. Here, I select the area where I want to write the text. I enter the text I want to write. I'll write Fusion 360. Using the buttons here, I can move the words like in a word processor. I can also change the size, align, italicize. I validate, finish the sketch, and do a small rotation to see better. I click the Extrusion button, select the part to emboss, pull or push, and validate. Now let's look at another way to create extrusion's text on a less cooperative surface. First, we create an offset plane from this face at 90 millimeters. Then we create a sketch on that plane. We select text, move a bit, and write Fusion 360 in this area. We change the size this time to 9. The rest we leave as is. That's already good. Now in the menu, I select the Emboss option. In the dialog box that appears, I first select the sketch contour, that will be the text, then the face, which will be the rounded surface here. And there you go, embossed text on a circular surface. When you're working on a project and it progresses, don't forget to save it from time to time by clicking the little floppy disk up here. Now let's see how to add texture and color to all this. Right-click on the object you want to color. Choose Appearance, then Paint Glossy, and scroll through the colors. I pick red, hold it, and drop it onto the vase. Right after, I pick blue and drop it onto the grid. If the blue doesn't suit me, I right-click on Modify. There I can choose from a palette of millions of colors. I'll go for a lighter blue, almost turquoise. Done. What do you think? Not great, right? Yeah, I agree. There are even wood, fabric, stone, and metal textures. Ah, metal. I'll pick polished bronze and apply it to our box. Yeah, not bad. Fusion 360 is a very powerful tool. Well, Fusion, just Fusion now. Since the beginning of the course, it's become Fusion. Moving on. You can create gears by clicking on Utility, then add in Script Add-in. A box opens. Scroll all the way down and select Spur Gear. Run it, and we configure the gear. We leave the module at 3, I think that's the minimum. Number of teeth, 20. Or diameter, and the rest, we leave as is. Validate. And there's our gear created. I'll speed things up a bit. I wanted to keep the video under 30 minutes. Well, that didn't happen. I go back to the menu by clicking on Solid. Compared to the box, the gear looks a bit big. I grab the measure tool and measure the ends of two opposite teeth. It's quite large, 66 millimeters. I shouldn't, but since I wanted to mention the scale tool, I'll take the opportunity. Here it is, I click on it. I click on the part to adjust its scale. With the arrow, I can enlarge or shrink it. It's easier to enter the value manually, 0.50. And I validate. Gears don't appear in the regular bodies, but here in Spur Gear. I click on it, then on Body, and again on Body. I shouldn't again, but I'll make another copy. We're almost at the end of the tutorial, yet there are still loads of tools and options, forms, technical drawings, electronics, but we won't have time to cover them, and I don't know them that well anyway. Before finishing, I want a tool and two options. Right-click here on the hole and modify it. If I tilt the part a bit, you'll see a small circle. If you move it to the right, the hole gets bigger. To the left, it gets smaller. I use this option a lot when making parts for self-tapping screws, like to hold the speaker of the radio here on the left. Now let's look at the final tool. We saw how to section a part. Now we'll see how to merge a part. Move the screw here and make sure it touches the box properly. That's good. I validate. I click on body 6, the box, hold down Ctrl and click on screw 1. Since I clicked body 6 first, the merged part will keep that name. I click on merge and validate. Screw 1 disappears. And to prove it, if I hide body 6, both parts disappear because they're merged. Now, the final option, well, more of a trick. We create a section analysis on this face and move it over here. When you design parts, you might sometimes get defects like this. A small rounded edge with a bit sticking out. You take the extrude tool and pull it until the defect disappears. You'll ask, why not use the opacity tool? I'd say, nope, that doesn't work. With section analysis, you can select faces inside the cut. With opacity, you can't go through. That's it, the tutorial is over. I had loads more to teach you, but now you'll probably say, no, stop. If you've made it this far, you should have a solid foundation to create any moderately complex part. If you liked the tutorial, leave a thumbs up and a comment, it's always appreciated.